Okay.
Perfect. Okay, everyone, this is Raymond Flotat from mxdwn.com. That's Mixdown. And I'm here with the fabulous, the talented, the legendary. I'll go with
Mm.
legendary,
Oh my
Anjali
goodness.
Bhimani.
Hi, how you doing? That is,
I'm
I don't know if you can call me legendary unless you're making a pun on Apex Legends.
no,
That I'll accept, but definitely, I don't know that I can go. I don't think I can own legendary just yet.
you go as like a
I'll work on
graduation
it.
process. You start at Apex Legends to become legendary.
Exactly. It's like a hierarchy. You got to work your way through.
Absolutely. Now, I speaking with someone who's been an actor for a long time,
Mhm.
and there's no way, given what's going on in the world right now, I couldn't ask you how you're doing and how you're feeling in the wake of the SAG strike.
Thank you for asking. What a great question to be asking, first of all, in terms of like just asking after people's feelings, because I do think that that is a casualty right now that a lot of people don't realize
Hmm.
is part of the package here. I am doing fine, you know, overall with work because I'm lucky enough to be working in a lot of different mediums, but it's a heavy time. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It is a very heavy time. I think making the decision to go on strike is it's never ever something a union wants to do. It's never no one wants to go on strike, and especially this one. I know our negotiators and our negotiating committee really did everything they possibly could to both look after their members and negotiate in earnest to try to make this work. So what I find heavy about it is that even with that much love and effort and with the extension and everything, that agreement still is so far apart. There's a big chasm between what the AMPTP wants and what SAG-AFTRA is asking for. And
Mhm.
so that heaviness comes from realizing what a disconnect there is between those two parties. That there are so many people suffering on one side, and that the other side doesn't quite understand how that is happening. I know that there are producers and production companies that care very much and very much want this to be over, and I work with many of them regularly. So it's just it's an unexpectedly heavy time, I
Yeah, I
think.
mean,
And I really, you know, one thing that I love among a million things that I love, but one thing that I love about actors and writers and artists in general is that part of the package when they are struggling is to help other people get through the struggle. So, what is heartening to me is seeing so many people putting together benefits, and these are even people who are having trouble during the strike because they don't have work. Watching friends, you know, I'm organizing a benefit, and everybody's putting together live streams and live performances and stuff to help each other, and not just help each other in SAG-AFTRA. I've seen a bunch of people putting together things for IATSE, people putting together things for workers who work on set, whether it's craft services or transpo. So that is very heartening to me, that there still is underneath this very serious fight, there is this unified desire to take care of each other. And that really is at its core what I believe the strike is about. It's about taking care of other people and making sure that other people get taken care of. If it can't be even, at least fairly enough that they can own and feel valued when they go and use their talents for something to create something beautiful. It's very hard to create when you don't feel valued.
right.
It's very hard to do that, and I don't believe that you have to do it for the love of the art. I've never believed in that. You maybe start creating things for the love of the art, but when you choose it as a profession, you should be able to choose it as a profession.
You know, it's some people I know as I've gone further in life, more and more people that I know that are in the game and who are affected by this. But then there's
Mm-hmm.
also just running an entertainment magazine, people we pay attention to or follow. And, you
Sure.
know, what I notice, and this is, of course, not something that really has ever affected anything I've ever done in my life, right? Like, I don't have the specter of something like this happening and how long it could stretch out. I
Mm-hmm.
watch it and I'm like, I'm scared. That's why I start asking a question like that, because when
Yeah.
I look at this, it's with the AI issue on the table. I don't know how this gets resolved. I mean, I am very scared for like that the studios are basically like, no, we will not even remotely address that AI concern. Like that disparity in it as certainly for them, and I'm not characterizing this because of any statement they've made, but like obviously they're reticent to agree to that because they're thinking how they can use it to make a lot more money in the future.
Of course.
And when I see a lot of the people out there who are striking and are protesting and, who are trying to do all the things you mentioned, there's a lot of confidence, right? Like there's a lot of, yes, we're going to win. Yes, we're going to prevail. And I'm not saying that they won't. I certainly hope that they do. But as I watch this all play out, I'm like, oh God, this is going to go on a long time.
So here's where I would offer something that maybe might help alleviate some of that fear, because this is something that I am holding on to.
Please.
I have always trusted in the creativity and the ingenuity of people to find a way through what seems like an impossible problem when they are doing it in earnest. And I do think somewhere, look, if we are a creative enough society to come up with AI, then we are a creative enough society to come up with a way to resolve this issue. Mm-hmm. That's what I believe. If we are, and especially if you're, dealing with artists who are coming together to offer something up. The biggest challenge is I shouldn't say the biggest challenge, but one of the challenges I do foresee is similar to what you said, which is, can we come up with something that is creative enough and versatile enough that the AMPTP is happy with the amount of profit that they can make, and we are happy enough with the protections that we have. What has happened in the past with negotiations that we very much cannot let happen this time is that when some form of new technology or innovation comes out and changes the way acting and the way writing exist in these, in media, like AI, like streaming, when those things first come on, there's always been a temptation for one side to say, well, we don't know how much money we don't know how good it's going to be, so we can't really put those in let's wait and see if it's successful. Let's wait and see if it blows up. And then we'll roll back and we'll talk about what we can do about it. I think that's happened too many times in the past.
Sure.
For either party to believe that is a valid way to work. So, but I do really have faith that if both parties come back to the table, there is a creative way, provided we can maintain respect and maintain that creativity. There is some way that we can figure out something that works out for both parties. It just, there just needs to be a willingness to be in the same room and figure it out together.
I'm not asking this because I think you have like insight into the negotiating sides of it or anything, but just purely from your own speculation, if you had to guess, how long do you think it's going to take before this comes back together?
I absolutely can't tell you. I wouldn't even venture a guess. Yeah, that was like asking, how long do you think lockdown is going to happen? How long do you think the pandemic is going to last?
Sure.
And this is, it's not a health crisis, but this is definitely something that is as serious for a lot of people, because it's their living is on the line, their ability to pay their bills is on the line, and the future of our industry is on the line. So yeah, I wouldn't even hazard a guess. I would hope that it would happen the day after both parties return to the table, but first we got to get there. Yeah, that's the first step.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, if you permit me, I'd like to go way back.
Please, yes, left turn. Let's go.
We will rewind and go very far back. And I know we don't have time enough for like the expanded formulation of what this answer might mean, because it's probably a lot over the course of your life. But one of the things is I was looking into different things I wanted to talk to you about. One of the things that's really interesting to me is, and of course, whenever I speak to musicians, we talk to a lot of musicians at Mixdown, and effectively is, what brought you to this in the first place? When you think of acting and your desire for it, the passion, the drive for it, and at some point there was a thing that switched in you that said, that's where I need to be.
So I think there are two different, and it wasn't like a pivotal moment, but there are two different switches that got turned on. One is the switch that realized, oh my gosh, look at how theater, look at how acting performances, whether I'm in it or watching it, look at how that makes me feel. It was a feeling that I got nowhere else. And I would get it when I was, in fifth grade doing book reports, but I was up in front of the class doing the book report. And that there was some kind of connection that I felt then that I didn't feel anywhere else other than when I was telling stories in some form. Whether it was, writing an English class or putting on the school play or whatever it was, there was that feeling. And then so once that happened, obviously I started doing the school plays and doing wherever I could get my hands on it. But I didn't realize until high school that it was a viable thing to do as a career. Like I hadn't connected the dots that, of course, there are people who do this for a living. I watch them on television. They are out there on Broadway. They are voicing the games that I play on my computer. It's happening. Somewhere in high school, I realized that was an option, probably because I was looking at colleges and realized, oh, there's like whole programs that I can go to. I can go to Northwestern for theater. Mm-hmm. This is amazing. And that's what I ended up doing. So once that switch was turned on, there was no stopping it.
Wow.
Because I think one of the biggest obstacles for people, particularly maybe with their families or with their communities when they're trying to go into the arts is, oh, well, how are you going to make a living? Oh, right. Well, this is really hard. But once I realized, I just like any other profession, I can train and then I can enter the workforce. And that's kind of for me, that was as matter of fact as it went. Now, I understand that for most people, it's not that matter of fact in terms of how they see it. But for me, it was, because my family was very education oriented. So you want to do something, you train to be really, 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 really good at it. You put all your effort into it and you make a living. That's how you do it. And so, yeah, once that switch was turned on, there was no question of whether or not this would be what I wanted to do. There was also no question of, oh, I may have to quit at some point. But because I know a lot of actors run into that when they're questioning, because there are long stretches of time between gigs many times. Mm-hmm. And I never understood, for me, the idea of quitting acting, because as far as I'm concerned, it's one of the most wonderful fields in the sense that I can act until I'm 95. Like I can act until I die. This is like the only thing I have to do to keep acting is not die. The bar is low. In terms of actually making a living and being successful in whatever ways you consider successful, whatever sure. benchmarks you find, that's where the difficulty lies. But yeah, it's been a very matter of fact thing for me. And thankfully, whenever I have the moments that I've lost faith or the moments that I've maybe been down about it, I have always had a tremendous support system around me, whether it is my family or my friends or the community around me. My manager, God bless her, I've been with her for 16 years, and she has believed in me more than I have believed in myself many times. Yeah, I've been very, very fortunate to build this wonderful team of humans around me that don't let me fall.
So, I mean, as you've been going through this progression and all the different things you've done, and from my mm-hmm. understanding, you started a little bit more with theater before you mm-hmm. kind of started doing TV and movies and then video games. And I mean, you mentioned it kind of like how a lot of people do. Like, it's very, very hard to make it in acting, right? Like, it's very, very hard to get to the point where you make a sustainable living, never mind the strike and all the things that means mm-hmm. to everything right mm-hmm. now. But I mean, for you, it sounds like, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, so certainly correct me wherever you feel the need to, but it sounds like for you, there wasn't really I'm doing this as long as I can be successable at it, financially speaking.
Yeah, no. Yeah. That was never, partly because, again, my parents, God bless them, not only were they supportive in that they loved, my parents are doctors who met acting in medical school. So it was already like the arts were in our family. Mm-hmm. But my parents, regardless of what I did, they said, whatever you want to do, great. Be really good at it and be able to make a living at it. As long as you love it, you can make a living at it and you're good at it, knock yourself out. Mm-hmm. And so again, it was a very matter of fact thing. And part of what I think has, I don't want to say made it easier for me, because it's not been easy, but part of the equation of that was saying yes to storytelling in as many forms as I possibly could, which is why the career that you were talking about has so many different branches of that tree, because any chance I've gotten to be able to work in a new medium, I've been excited to. There's never been, oh, I don't want to do that. Oh, I don't want to do commercials. I don't want to do that. There's never been that moment. There's been, ooh, wow, there's another way. Cool. I'm allowed to do this. This is amazing. Right. And so that has been very exciting to me. And that's also where innovation and the movement forward in terms of technology and in terms of all the stories we can tell and how we can tell them, that's actually been a wonderful thing, because there's been more opportunity to create just in different ways. And each one of those different ways has a different way of touching the viewer or touching the player. Right. So each one of them has a beauty unto itself. And So yeah, it's always been well, I need to make a living, so I'm going to make a living.
Are you familiar with Rick Rubin?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
My
Not
husband is also a musician, so
okay, there you go.
he's the bass player for a band called Vintage Trouble. So Rick
Oh,
Rubin is like in our family very
highly regarded.
yes, exactly.
Okay, because I have to ask because, if you're not a music person, a lot of people have no idea who he is,
Unless you
like
watched Dave, people know who. If you watched Dave, you know.
yeah, sure, of course. And I mean, effectively, he's on a book tour right now, and
Mm-hmm.
he's basically written a book about, and it's mostly like artistic ramblings, right? Like
Yeah,
it is
the creative process. Right?
exactly. And one of the things he's been saying a lot in interviews, and it's certainly easy to say if you're working with big famous things that make you tons of money, but his point was don't do anything because you think you're going to be profitable at it. Do it because that's what you are and that's what you have to do.
Mm-hmm.
That was essentially the point he's been making to anyone that would listen. He's like, make sure that you're satisfied first with what you're creating and then worry about the rest of it after that.
And that right there, that interpretation is where I think that is what I believe is the correct interpretation of you have to do it for the love of the art. But the problem is a lot of people say you have to do it for the love of the art, whether you make money or not. And I think that, again, like that, you don't go in it to be rich. You don't go in it. I mean, some people have, but I don't believe that is the most creatively fulfilling way to do it.
Mm.
Obviously there are sacrifices you make, there are choices that you make when you sometimes want to do something that's artistically fulfilling but perhaps not profitable. We all make those decisions in our lives. The same people who do engineering internships and don't get paid, but they get all this wonderful experience. But that's a lot of times that's a play for people, or a lot of times that's something else. But you do have to start with a fire. At least I do. I don't know about other people. I have to start with a fire that is more than my bank account. When it is a necessity to pay the bills, it's a necessity to pay the bills. But even then, I know that I can't squeeze my acting so hard. I cannot walk into an audition desperate to pay my bills.
Right.
And I think it's important for all artists to really, really own that it doesn't matter how you pay your bills. If it is ethical and legal and morally conscionable, do the needful so that you can be creative.
Right.
So that you can be free to do that. And you're not thinking when you go into that audition room, oh boy, well, I got to do anything that I possibly can because I don't know how I'm going to make the rent. I think that is very stifling.
Right.
But also it can be for some people, not for me, but I know that it can be for some people very galvanizing. I know that for some people it's, create a problem, solve a problem, as my father-in-law says. If you got something to do, you're going to find a way to fix it. You're going to find a way to do it. Sure. Parents know all about that. You're going to find a way to feed your kids no matter what. Right.
Sure.
And so, but the creative process, I do think needs to come from a fire that's a little bigger than that. For me, that fire comes from really recognizing how much of a service it can be to people, how much storytelling through the ages has been used. We have tomes from the ancient Greeks about the arts, about having that catharsis and how necessary that is to society, to be able to have that in there. And for me to be able to use this crazy vessel that I was put into by whatever forces out there in the world, I don't know what's out there, but this vessel that happens to be particularly in touch with their emotions and have a imagination that is particularly active. If I've been given this particular vessel, then I want to use it to be able to take people on journeys that they haven't been able to go on before and that they might never be able to go on. My job is to look at you and say, I got you. Don't worry about it. You sit there. I'm going to do the heavy lifting. I'm going to do the crying. I'm going to do the laughing. I'm going to do all of the experiencing, essentially, of this thing that we're going to go through together. And at the end of our time together, your life is still intact. You are safe. You are home or in your seat or wherever you are. But we had an experience together that may have expanded you a little bit and may have shown you the world in a different way, that may have just entertained you and brought you some levity in life when you're feeling dark. It's such a powerful thing. And I think that's what I felt when we were talking about, those first two times that I felt like this is why I'm doing it.
Right.
That feeling of elation, that feeling of watching a musical and not knowing why a particular note is making me leak out my eyeballs. Like something, there's something about it. There's a power about it that can't be denied. And that for me, that gets you through the tough times. Knowing that someone out there might watch this movie, play this game, see this performance and have some kind of a sea change inside them. Yes. that expands them a little bit and takes them back into their lives a little bigger than they were. That's just like that's gold. That's way more than the paycheck. That's way more than anything else. That's the stuff that keeps you going, and that's the stuff that makes it fun to find new ways to create, because it means you're finding new ways to touch people's hearts, and that's exciting.
So, I mean, let me attempt to connect all the threads of the things we've discussed
Sure.
here. So let's see if I can go like
and this is such a fun conversation. I think I can push us a little bit longer if that's okay with Grace and Kat. Yes,
that's cool.
Okay, cool. Let's I think I can get. All right, dope. Yeah. I think I have like 10 more minutes.
Okay, all right.
And then I have to run.
Okay, no problem. We'll go as long as we can, and then you just give me the hook. So basically, to the point, and not to go back to the strike thing in any way, but just to make that case, right? Like you're talking about the way that it can move people, touch people, influence them, inspire them. And I mean, this is a part of that inherent value in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like ultimately, that people consume a crap ton of entertainment in this country, right? Like it isn't like it isn't
and around the world. I mean, look, my family comes from India, so Bollywood and Tollywood and all of the film industry over there is ginormous.
Right.
People in all financial positions will go to see a movie in India.
Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, with all of that, like you talked about, you've connected the different mediums, different art forms, and those people get different things from them, whether you're talking about theater and that experience and feeling and, feeling someone right in front of you, movies or television, which can be passive in their own ways, or video games, which are super active and engaged. So you talked a little bit about what they get from it. And the question that I wanted to ask you is, and then I'm going to go into some other things and some of the more actual play content that you do. Ultimately, what do you get from it when you do these different kinds of things? How does it change from voice acting to like theater to like, on screen? What is it like for you? What's different for you between those mediums?
Well, what's different in terms of doing them, or what's different in terms of what I get, like the reward that I get?
The latter part.
It's exactly what I just talked about. There's this reward of getting to take people on a journey. There's this feeling of like, wow, I might have, and especially getting to meet people at conventions and being able to talk with them and hear it directly from them. When you know that a scene that you did or a character that you portrayed helped someone feel empowered or helped someone through a dark time, there is this tremendous sense of efficacy and agency that it brings you as a human being. There is also, I mean, one of the luxuries I feel like we have as actors and artists is that part of our job is self-exploration, which means the stuff that a lot of people have to do outside of their 9-to-5 job or outside of whatever the job there is, whether they do therapy or some other thing, that's part of the package for what we do. We get to go through all of those things. We get to explore all of those things. So what especially at this point in my career, because I've been doing it so long, it just brings me this huge appreciation of the complexity of life, and this huge appreciation of no matter what you go through, there is value for it. There's value to it, because in the darkest moments that I have felt, part of what has helped me get through them is knowing someday this is going to serve me, because I'm going to have compassion for someone else going through it. Not it's going to serve me as an actor. That is a choice. That's one way to look at it. But just understanding that this is part of life, and someone somewhere may need that from me. It's why I wrote my book. I very much wanted to let people know you're not alone. People go through things. The people you think are the most successful and the happiest and their lives are blessed have been through things similar to you. And even if my journey is not exactly the same as your journey, even if our paths are very unique and very disparate, you are not alone, because I am here and I am witnessing it with you. And I am standing next to you, and I am here to crack a joke or sing a song or help you by telling you my experiences. But one way or another, you're not alone on that path.
Right.
That sense of community that happens when you're storytelling in any form is very, very engaging and very, very fulfilling in a way that I don't feel with other things that I do in my life. that I could
So,
have done for a living, but I chose this weapon of choice as the way to achieve my purpose. And I really do think that the purpose I tend to live by is letting people know they're not alone.
I like that term weapon of choice in describing
Yeah.
this. And, one of the things that, I wanted to cover with you is, how I first heard of you. The first time I ever saw you in anything, it was on Deadwood, of course, coming to the
Mm.
Critical Role people.
Mm-hmm.
And, I've always had, I think, a comparable relationship with watching and viewing entertainment that I think a lot of people do. For me, it's always been as very simple as, do I believe it? Right? Like, did I
Yeah.
believe that that happened? And that might be a super minimalistic way of looking at a very complex art form. But, my experience when I watched Undeadwood, and specifically as it pertained to things that you and Matt and Kari Payton did on that show, as you were bringing that all to bear, when that came to its finale, whenever it was, when, Kari's character basically said, I'm going to murder you, I visibly
Spoiler
got,
alert.
yeah, sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry,
Okay.
internet. It's been out for 3 years.
It's been on for like 4 years, so
Yeah,
fine.
it's been out there. Hopefully by now
But
you've
yes,
seen it. But yeah,
but yes.
ultimately, when that finale comes to pass, I visibly in my chair felt scared, right? Like, and something in the way the three of you brought that together, and of course, Kari specifically, there was something
Mm.
that it kind of hit me in that moment that not that an appreciation, I always had a deep appreciation for anybody who does this because I don't think I could, right? Like, ultimately, the just something in how powerfully that was brought forth and how much, like, if it wasn't like, oh, I know I'm watching a show on the internet with a set,
Mm-hmm.
I swear to God, I think he would have murdered him right there. Like, it really
Mm-hmm.
felt like that to me.
Yeah.
And that was the kind of thing that was a part of why, we've always covered entertainment here at this magazine, but this is why I've gone further in this direction since, was literally stemming from that moment, because it was how did someone do that? Right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't get the sweet science of that. I've spent my whole life analyzing music, and I can tell you like what sound is wrong here or how that bridge or chorus
Mm-hmm.
wasn't constructed correctly. But how did I really believe that he wasn't Kari Payton, the very sweet man who's obviously very intelligent and kind, but like someone who would happily murder someone in cold blood? And that's the
Yeah.
part that I haven't been able to connect the wires on.
Well, I don't think you're supposed to.
Yeah.
I think that's the secret sauce that Rick Rubin is trying to bring out in people. Is that part that you can't explain. I do think tabletop role-playing games are unique into themselves in terms of the way that they enable people who are playing them, whether they are actors like we are or whether they're people at home, the way that they enable the player to inhabit a character and inhabit a story and not know what's going to happen next, because the dice are going to determine that. Even the dungeon master or the game master has no idea what's going to happen next.
Mm-hmm.
But that commitment to story and that commitment to your characters that we are taught to do in theater school and in acting school, but it's someone else's script. When it's your words and your creation and your script, and you are that invested in it, and you have been in this character for this prolonged period of time, not necessarily like like that we were playing the game the whole time we were playing the game, right? So you're in that the whole time. I think there is a giving over of like, you don't, it's not that you check out of your own self and you're suddenly, you are this character. I don't think we
Sure.
do that, but there's definitely a combination of that character and you where the lines are a little blurred.
Mm.
And those feelings and those moments just they do happen. They're gold. And I'm happy to say that at this point in my career, I know they're not lightning in a bottle. I used to think and especially when I was a less capable actress, I had a really hard time finding those moments. And now for me, I've figured out the ways to let go of all the fears, let go of all the concerns of what you look like, let go of anything else, because nothing matters more than the story.
Right.
Because that story is the thing that's going to affect people. It's not what you look like. It's not how you say a particular word. It's your commitment to the truth in that moment that is going to elicit exactly what you just said, which is, do I believe it or not? Because do I believe it is really, in my opinion, what I interpret it as is, am I going to invest in this? Is this worth me investing my heart in this? Is this worth me giving over my tears as an audience member?
Mm-hmm.
Is this worth my opening myself up and being vulnerable? And when the actors are doing that for the story, I think it it is easier for the audience to be able to do that. So obviously, when you have actors like Matthew Mercer and Kari Payton and so many of the amazing people that I've been blessed enough to work with and to call friends, like that certainly makes it a lot easier.
Sure.
But yeah, I don't think you're supposed to know how it happens. You're just supposed to trust that it does, and that it's not once in a blue moon, and that it's not just like, oh, it might happen, it might not. No, it's there. You just have to really crack yourself open to it.
Before we run out of time, and just in terms of segueing off here, I just wanted to ask, in terms of Undeadwood and what that was and the characters you all put together, has there ever been any discussion about whether through something more of Undeadwood or even anything else, moving those characters on, doing more with those characters?
There hasn't been any discussion of it. I think it was a kind of a perfect thing unto itself, and
Sure.
and we've all moved on from it. And there are so many more. There's so many other stories to tell with other people, with other creators, and obviously Critical Role has, they have brought in so many exceptional people, not just to their main campaign, but to the side stories that they're doing, and other companies. I mean, we have got Dimension 20. We've got so many people. We've got Basic Quest coming up that is so dear to my heart, because it's something that we've created specifically for the South Asian gaming community, not for the South Asian gaming community, but to represent it and to show people that this traditionally Eurocentric game system, it works for everyone. Come to this party.
Sure.
Come to the party of this culture, please. But we'll explain it to you. Come on in. This is awesome. That's what inclusivity is about. Come to the party.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think there are so many other stories that are worth being told, that one will live in and of what itself, what it was for itself, and we have other things to move on to. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. That makes me a little sad, because I was hoping for more at some point.
I would love to know what happens after that condition of Kari's in the game wears off. I would have loved to know, but I think at this point I can't speak for anybody else, but I suspect that is the case.
Gotcha.
There are so many amazing stories to be told, and there will be more stories that are as touching as that one was, and as rewarding as that one was. I promise you.
Fair enough. I assume we're about out of time, so should I just ask one more?
Go ahead.
You sure?
Let's see what happens. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay. So obviously, you and several other folks from Critical Role have Candela Obscura that you've been doing recently. And so here's my thing. I think I had a comparable gap that I've heard you mention in other interviews, where I played D&D when I was 12, 13, 14, and then kind of stopped for a very, very long time. And, came back to it in the last 5-6 years, and, and really enjoying where it's at as a thing. And, it's D&D is itself, whether it was in the 90s or the 80s or now, is complicated, right? It's not like a thing you can just do with
it's crunchy.
It's crunchy. There's a lot of rules, and there's a lot of different things. And of course, that's what, the Dungeon Master's for. Like, they're to help you. So there's certainly mechanisms to make that easier, but it's its own challenge, right? Now, Critical Role has lots of different kinds of content. Sometimes it's in D&D, but sometimes it's in other things. And this, because it's in this new kind of game tool set that they have, here is my thing. And I have a lot of trouble following it. Now, that might be not the acting, not the story, that in the kind of the place,
the mechanics. You have trouble following the mechanics.
Yes, and I mean, it's not.
Yeah, well, that makes perfect sense. It's a brand new language.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a brand new language, and part of the job of the show. And I hope I should let you ask your question, and then I'll fill that.
No, you were about on the tip of it. I mean, basically, so I spent time trying to learn and follow, because there were videos that kind of gave basics of it, and it was like, wow, my brain must be so married to D&D's mechanics that I have trouble kind of separating myself. So what I was going to ask is effectively, how long did it take you and the rest of the players? How long did that take in terms of prep to get you to the point? Because you don't look like you're struggling with it. You look like you've got it as well as anything else.
Well, just like D&D, it's an open book test with other people. So you can not know what you're doing, and we'll figure it out in the moment, because we all have the book, we all have the rules, we all are asking each other. I think, well, first of all, part of the job of the show is not just to entertain, it's to help other people know about this game system and help other people start to understand it. And it will continue to be that as this season ends and then the next one happens, and when you have new characters and whatnot. um I that is part of the job of the show, is to make it easier. I also think it'll be easier when the full rule book comes out, because there'll be a lot more context. But for us, we had one like learn the game session, and then we jumped into session 0 to like get our characters playing, and that was it. And
That
then we were
quickly.
like, you're in. And the play test before session 0, we weren't even playing. We were playing completely different characters. I was playing a character that I think I named like, what did I name him? Boogie Smalls. Like I made a comic character, like that had nothing to do with Charlotte, like a very ridiculous. And I learned very quickly, okay, this is probably not the gameplay system to be playing a comic character. Let's maybe not do that. But yeah, there was it was a very quick study system. And I'm while it might be hard to follow as a viewer, I do think it's significantly easier than D&D to play as a player.
Interesting.
Because there are less mechanics and there are less things to learn, and it's much more about the storytelling than it is about the rules. And you're just using a few d6, and it's not necessarily as complicated as D&D or other gaming systems, Shadowrun, and like the ones that are very much like you don't have to read the whole book, but you kind of want to read the whole book because it's this giant book with all of these tables and stuff. This one, it doesn't operate that way. It feels, or it felt at least, like it was much more about the story, and also like giving into, unlike D&D, where you got the option for raising the dead and reincarnation spells and all of this stuff. Like there are very real feeling consequences to your actions. And there's so many other game systems that do the same thing, whether it's the Outbreak Undead that we did with We're Alive Frontier, and that's a very permadeath exists in that world.
Sure.
I think in this one there is a deep investment in not being reckless, even though we obviously on the show we made some really stupid choices, but not being reckless to the point of like, well, I know someone can bring me back, so I'm just going to do this thing. There's an investment in the actual story that keeps you engaged that way, just like I would be in real life. And so that I very much dig, and I hope the audience does too, because I feel like when you might lose a character, you might lose an actor in the show, you kind of like really invested in them not going away.
Sure. And I think where I'll end with, and because I'm sure you've got to go as an actor in doing something as dark as this, because it's pretty dark, right? Like it's in that very like kind of steampunk gothic horror kind of varietal of things, and it's quite frankly darker than I usually go, right? Like
yeah. Darker than I usually go. I am not a horror genre person.
Me neither. I've never enjoyed being scared. It's just never worked for me. And I don't know what that says about me, but that's a whole other story. But when you're going to a place like that as a part of a story like this, does that make it harder in terms of bringing apart that secret sauce that we were talking about before? Or is it just another flavor of this is what the job is? Is it harder to be in such a dark place?
For me personally, it's the same investment.
No.
It's the exact, I care as much about this character as I care about any other character that I play. Okay. Every time whether it's an audition or whether it's a job or whether it's a game or whatever, I fall in love with the character I'm playing, and then I have to let them go.
Yeah.
And that's part of both the joy and the sort of tragedy every time you get to do something like this, is you fall in love and then you let it go. And but that again is the really special thing about storytelling in all of these different mediums, because they don't exist. That moment doesn't exist in perpetuity. That moment does go away, and that to me makes it more valuable.
Sure,
if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's punk rock. It's a happening.
Yeah, but yeah, no, I think it's just different circumstances applied with the same level of commitment.
Fantastic. Well, then we should probably leave it there. I have about like 50 more questions, but we would be here till dawn. So,
and also my computer's about to die, and I'm going to have to find my power. So I was worried we were going to lose you like right in the middle of that question. That would have been a tragedy. I'll tell you what, we can do this again sometime if you're interested. I would very much like to, because this has been a great conversation, and I love your questions. Your questions are really, thank you for being so insightful with your questions.
This is my pleasure. I mean, hey, and anytime I can do this in the Captain America sense all day.
without a shield and a tight suit. I love it.
Yeah, I don't think you want to see me in a tight suit or a
I just
shield.
feel
So
like you're more comfortable than he is. He doesn't look comfortable to me.
that's a fair point. And
You
like
know?
that whole knight in shining armor thing definitely fits with the way I kind of approach everything. So there you go. I'm with
Oh,
that.
well, there you go. Good. I like it. I like